Now, the Trump administration is condemning the Chinese regime's latest restrictions on rare earth products. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer and Secretary Scott of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, provided the latest updates today. Listen.
China's announcement is nothing more than a global supply chain power grab. While China has taken a number of retaliatory trade actions against the United States, Europe, Canada, Australia, and others in recent years, this move is not proportional retaliation. It is an exercise in economic coercion on every country in the world. At its core, China's new measures include a rule saying that any product of which more than 0.1% of minerals consist of minerals mined or processed in China, one must seek approval from the Chinese government before trading it. Since many important semiconductors, for example, have these critical minerals, and semiconductors are in nearly everything, this rule gives China control over basically the entire global economy and the technology supply chain.
Greer said China's export controls are a clear repudiation of the past 6 months of trade negotiations. Meanwhile, Bessent is optimistic that the trade tensions can de-escalate. He said the U.S. has had substantial communication with China over the past few days, and there will be more this week. The Treasury Secretary noted that the Trump administration wants to help China, not hurt it. That's because a slowdown in the global economy will hurt China the most. But he stressed that China cannot be trusted with the global supply chain.
This should be a clear sign to our allies that we must work together, and work together we will. There will be a series of meetings this week during World Bank IMF week, and we are all aligned. Not only is China fueling Russia's war, but China's actions have once again demonstrated the risk of being dependent on them on rare earths, and for that matter, anything. If China wants to be an unreliable partner to the world, then the world will have to decouple. The world does not want to decouple. We want to de-risk. But signals like this are signs of decoupling, which we don't believe China wants. And again, we do not want to decouple. We should work together to de-risk and diversify our supply chains away from China as quickly as possible.
Greer said there are a lot of low-risk areas where the U.S. can trade with China. Bessent emphasized that the U.S. will not be commanded or controlled by China's economic coercion. He noted that President Trump is still expected to meet with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping at the APEC summit in South Korea at the end of the month. And China's new restrictions on rare earth exports are raising concerns in Europe. European officials say the EU is teaming up with the U.S. and other G7 partners to craft a united response to the Chinese Communist Party. China, the world's top rare earth producer, just tightened its export rules, adding new elements and restrictions for semiconductor makers ahead of planned talks between Presidents Trump and Xi Jinping. The EU Trade Commissioner yesterday called the move unjustified, saying EU ministers meeting in Denmark see it as a critical concern. He said the G7 could hold a video call this week to coordinate next steps, including potential plans to diversify supply chains and speed up new mining projects. The Danish foreign minister urged Europe to stay tough and united, but also to work closely with Washington. Trump, meanwhile, has threatened China with 100% tariffs, sparking a brief sell-off on Wall Street. Louisiana is taking a stand against foreign AI threats. Governor Jeff Landry signed an executive order on Monday banning Chinese AI tools like DeepSeek from schools, universities, and state agencies. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has this report.
The order targets AI systems run by hostile foreign governments like the Chinese Communist regime. It references national security and privacy concerns. Landry pointed to programs like DeepSeek, which federal investigators say can spread propaganda and transfer Americans' personal data to China. The governor said the move is about putting Louisiana and the U.S. first by protecting students, state agencies, and sensitive data from potential spying. He said, quote, as technology advances, so do the threats, adding that this order is designed to safeguard both people and national security.
The Department of Homeland Security says that Mexican cartels placed bounties on U.S. law enforcement officers and officials. Joining us to discuss is Eamon Blair, a senior fellow at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. He specializes in border security and immigration policy with over 2 decades of experience as a U.S. Border Patrol agent and U.S. Army officer. So, Eamon, good to see you. Good afternoon. How serious would you say this bounty threat to law enforcement?
It's going to be quite serious. As we can see, that we already had 3 gun attacks here in Texas. With the last one, we had some deaths because of that. Now, unfortunately, many Americans think that the cartels, a majority of them are present inside the United States. That's really not how they operate. They operate in a decentralized manner. They have cells that are completely compartmentalized and utilize intermediaries or subcontractors and contractors to do their bidding here in the U.S. In this case, just what DHS put out, they're utilizing gangs like Latin Kings, and they're utilizing the communists or the extreme far left on the streets to do their bidding. So the cartels are still maintaining that control, that command and control, but they're doing it from afar away, and they're doing so that there's degrees of separation between them and themselves, and it's just a form of counterintelligence work that they're conducting.
So have Mexican cartels always collaborated with street gangs? What is the objective here for these cartels?
Yeah, good question. Yes. So the cartels, ever since they came up into the United States and built that entire pipeline when that was like early 90s, they started working hand in hand with our street gangs. You can look it up on our Texas DPS website. They tier them based off of the level with which they work with Mexican cartels, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And so Latin Kings is one of those tiers. They are a tier 1 gang. Now, in regards to Antifa and communists, yes, we saw this actually in the first Trump administration down there on the southern border. When we started having caravans coming up, we noticed that these anarchists and communists were working on the other side inside Mexico, trying to smuggle human beings and working with the cartels to come up into the United States. So there are a lot of actual Mexican journalists that were down there documenting this, showing that Antifa 100% was in Mexico working hand in hand to eradicate our sovereignty. Because at the end of the day, when you go onto their think tank right now, which is crimethink.com, you can see that their entire goal is to eradicate the sovereignty of this nation by eradicating each and every one of our personal or private property.
So after it does that, then what? I mean, is it looking for control of these Mexican cartels?
Yeah, really, it's looking for a diffusion of our law enforcement. Look, if all of our law enforcement, federal law enforcement, whether that's Border Patrol assisting ICE, whether that's DEA, FBI, if we have to consolidate all of our resources and manpower to just protect ICE operations, that leaves every other cartel operation inside the United States completely wide open. The same tactic was done at our southern border. When you have millions of illegal aliens coming up onto the border, it forces every single federal, local, state, and tribal agency to deal with that humanitarian crisis or challenge. Therefore, it leaves all the other operations that the cartels are involved in completely wide open. This is the same game, and that is why they are heavily invested in making sure that ICE can't do their job, that all the federal agencies have to assist ICE doing their job so that they can continue to conduct their operations.
Do you think the current violence that we're seeing against law enforcement officers is a result of this tiered bounty system that's incentivizing different acts of violence?
No, I think it's because of the lack of rule of law that's happening in our streets. Look, unfortunately, we still have elected officials, we have judges, we have district attorneys, we have all these people that are siding with the communists on the streets. They're siding with anarchists. They're siding with everyone that is looking to disrupt and destroy and destabilize our cities. And so because they see that there's very little action to counter this, there are arrests here and there on protesters, but for the most part, there has been no accountability on the rhetoric. There's been no accountability on any other action other than an assault on an agent. There's been no complete disruption of any of their operations attacking ICE or trying to stop ICE conducting their operations.
So I'm not an expert here, but how are these cartels funding these things, like the bounty, for example? I mean, is it fentanyl?
Yeah, great question. So the cartels are in multiple businesses. They're not just in narcotics, human smuggling, but they're also involved in our agriculture. They're involved in licit and illicit commodities. And look, every those millions of people that are inside the United States are recurring revenue for them. Meaning, when you arrest someone as a border patrol agent on the border, and they tell you that they owe $8,000 in U.S. cash to the Mexican cartels before they can pay off their debt and are no longer indentured servants, that takes time. And so the cartels, all these millions of illegal aliens inside the United States, are indebted to the Mexican cartel. So they're still receiving a recurring payment from all these illegal aliens. So the cartels as an enterprise have so many different ways and means to make money that this is a drop in the bucket to put a bounty and have the gang members, quote unquote gang members, do it themselves. And then also there's a degree of separation showing that, hey, we weren't involved, we're in Mexico.
Okay, so how do we cut off this money supply to these cartels, and what is the most effective strategy to protect federal agents?
Yeah, great question. First and foremost, we need to identify all the cartel nodes from Mexico into all the way into the United States. Unfortunately, a lot of the financial systems that the cartels utilize are Chinese banking systems or apps. And so right now, the Department of Justice needs to actively pursue with our intelligence community, going out and finding all the social network and networks and also nodes of the cartels, and just going after the logistics supply chain, whether that's finances, whether that is narcotic supply, whether that is transportation, stash houses, you name it. Second, how can we protect? The number one thing that we can do right now to protect our law enforcement is upholding the law. Make it so that way they can't be in those streets. This is not just some regular protest. This is a revolution, and we need to see it as such. And we need to hold every single person accountable that is inciting this violence towards our law enforcement. The next is also protecting them with our U.S. military. Look, right now it's in the court system that we can't utilize the National Guard. Unfortunately, the judiciary is thinking that they have the authority of the executive in this manner, and they're trying to make decisions for our president. So that's going to continue to be heard in the court, but we do need our military to also protect them.
Okay, so on the point of enforcing law, the Department of Homeland Security said people who dox or threaten or lay hands on officers will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. What are your thoughts on how the current administration is doing in terms of deterring these types of actions through law enforcement?
As we can see every single day, there's another attack. We can see that there's going to be a No Kings rally on this coming Saturday. Look, it's not stopping it, because if you wait until they make an assault on an agent, that's very reactionary. We are not doing proactive investigative work to conduct a complete investigation on all these networks and then go after them. Yes, I know that they invited citizen journalists to the White House to understand the nature of the threat and also these networks, but that should tell you something. Why is it that our federal government has to ask citizen journalists to come in and give them intel when we have three-letter agencies that should be doing that themselves? That kind of shows how broken the system has been and where we need to go. Right now, we're having to utilize citizen journalists to even understand what's actually happening on the ground and also internally, in order for us to make any certain arrests or any claims or threat of subversion or violence. So right now, really, in my opinion, if we want to protect this, if we want to stop this from progressing further into the later this year or into next year, we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to dismantle them as we would any terrorist organization in any contingency operation outside the United States. Now, this is not foreign internal defense. This is domestic internal defense against domestic terrorists and communist presence.
Okay, Eamon, I just have one more question here. Is there anything that regular people can do, or would you say this is purely a government problem?
I think really it's to dispel the myths. I think everyone needs to understand that right now, what is impacting or what the actual war is on you and your citizenship. Look, they want complete open borders. They don't agree with national sovereignty. They don't agree with your sovereignty. They don't agree with the state sovereignty. They don't agree with private property rights. All you have to do is read the Communist Manifesto, and you can see exactly what these people want is straight destruction. So what you can do is completely understand the threat first, understand, like reading Victor Davis Hanson's The Dying Citizen, understand or read Jesse Kelly's book, The Anti-Communist Manifesto. There's those two books would get you so far ahead in terms of actually understanding the threat. So that way you can actually clearly see it, whether that's on social media platforms, and you can also inform your neighbors that this is not a racist thing that we're doing. Mass deportations is actually impacting and affecting and protecting your citizenship.
Okay, well, Eamon, really interesting stuff. I'm really happy that you shared your insights with us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
A public safety crackdown in Washington, D.C. on sex offenders failing to comply with registration laws. Today, U.S. Attorney General for the District of Columbia, Jeanine Pirro, called on the D.C. Council to step up protections.
Registration alone does not protect the victims. Of utmost concern to me is the fact that Washington, D.C. has not required that these predators, whether they be pedophiles or sex offenders in general, are not mandated by any law to live away from a school, a playground, a rec center, a children's hospital.
Pirro shared the results of a 7-week operation in which federal officials conducted compliance checks on nearly 900 sex offenders in D.C. 25 were in violation of their sex offender notification requirements. 9 of those are Class A sex offenders, meaning they have been convicted of the highest level of sex crimes. Pirro shared maps showing that many of the offenders in D.C. are living within 1,000 feet of child-friendly locations. Pirro said she is shocked that Washington, D.C. does not have a law requiring offenders to stay away from locations children frequent. She noted 30 states in the U.S. do have such laws in place and called on the D.C. Council to pass one. Tensions continue to flare in Chicago as the legal fight over deploying the National Guard plays out in the courts. An appeals court recently ruled that the Trump administration can keep federalized Guard members in Illinois, but cannot deploy them. For a take on the situation from Chicago residents, NTD's Daniel Monahan spoke with the organization Chicago Flips Red.
Flipping Chicago red, we flipping Chicago red.
Chicago Flips Red defines itself as a grassroots movement aimed at empowering Black communities and advocating for economic and political independence. Co-founder Zoe Lee says her activism began after the city demolished her family's building in 2017.
Finally, when I realized I was going to continue to get ignored while I was there, I told them that if they did not settle this case, I would flip Chicago red.
Lee argues that Democratic leadership has failed Black communities in Chicago.
This is a Democratic stronghold, blue stronghold, dictatorship. Everything that they say Donald Trump is exactly what this machine is here. And everybody's connected, from the judges, the lawyers, the prosecutors, the city council, the teachers union, the police union. Is just one big fraternity sorority that's dedicated to the machine.
She supports bringing in the National Guard to Chicago.
We have a genocide in our own community, in the city of Chicago, on the south side and the west side, and it's been there, it's normalized.
Lee says President Trump is the only one addressing those issues.
And it's unfortunate that that Trump has to do it, but Trump has to do it. He can't help that he's white. He can't help that he came from a privileged life. You know, he can't help that he was a businessman. He can't help, but he can't help any of that. But what he saw was, I think, what anybody else saw was an issue with the whole United States of America. We were going to lose this country.
She also criticizes the city's handling of the migrant crisis, saying it's displaced longtime residents.
We're losing businesses by the hour. Regular Chicago citizens can't even get an apartment. They can't even get a house because everything is designed to only take care of these illegals because the city is paying it.
Lee believes illegal immigration is being weaponized politically against Trump.
They're using illegal aliens, but they're all putting it on Donald Trump, who literally inherited a crisis, and he's the only one that does not blame it on it. He doesn't say, well, I inherited this. Nah, I'm going in there and I'm going to take care of it.
She also accuses state leaders of ignoring community concerns.
And we don't even know. And then when we go to our elected officials like Pritzker and Brandon Johnson and Kwame Raoul, they act like what we're saying is a lie. They're literally getting on TV, doing these press conferences, and acting like everything that we're saying is an outright lie, knowing that everything we're saying is true.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker recently warned that federal agents in Chicago could face future prosecution, speaking on Fox News.
The tables will turn someday. These people should recognize.
Homeland Security criticized those remarks, calling threats to prosecute law enforcement for enforcing the law disgusting. The agency said Pritzker's rhetoric is fueling attacks on federal agents. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
President Trump is now having a press conference in the Oval Office with FBI Director Kash Patel. Let's take a look.
Appreciate it. But we're here for a different reason. It's called Operation Summer Heat, which is an appropriate term in light of what we're doing. And early yesterday morning, I returned from the Middle East, where we celebrated a historic agreement to end years of suffering and conflict. Amazing. Every country came together. I mean, even the enemies came out and totally endorsed it. Everybody, I've never seen anything like it. Nobody's seen anything like it. And just as we are forging peace and stability abroad, we're also restoring peace and safety and stability at home. And you see that in Washington, D.C., maybe better than any place, because we got there, and within 12 days it was very good. And within 30 days, it's been as safe as any city in the country. It's been great. Took out 1,700 people, got them out. These are career criminals in many cases, and people that shouldn't have been allowed in by the Biden administration. Historically, the summer months have been a time when violent crime soar, as you know, but not under President Trump. Today, we're announcing the results of a sweeping law enforcement effort known as Operation Summer Heat. We were in many cities that people didn't know about. We kept it a little quiet, and it had a big impact, and you'll hear that in a second. But over the past few months, FBI offices in all 50 states made crushing violent crime a top enforcement priority. That's what they did, rounding up and arresting thousands of the most violent and dangerous criminals. And these are among the most dangerous and violent people in the world. They were allowed, in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, they were allowed in by a very foolish, actually stupid, open border policy. Just anybody could have come in. They emptied out their jails, their prisons, their mental institutions. They emptied them into our country. And the people behind me have done an incredible job, because if we didn't have that administration, it would have been so much easier. They allowed millions of people in this country that shouldn't have been allowed, including over 11,000 murderers, half of whom murdered more than one person. And many of them are gone now, or they're put in prison, because we don't want to have them come back. So we literally put them in our prison, which we don't want to do. But we bring them back to their countries. Working with state and local partners, the FBI arrested over 8,000 violent criminals during the course of this period. In major cities like in New Orleans, Nashville, we saw a 250% increase in arrests. And we really went after the bad ones. These include 725 individuals wanted for violent crimes against children and murderers. These arrests are in addition to the work of our historic federal task forces that Make D.C. Safe Task Force has been unbelievable. I mean, the job they've done, it's incredible. And it's been so nice, because so many people, they're going out to dinner and they're having dinners. They didn't go out for 4 years. And now they're going out 3 times a week. Restaurants are opening. Restaurants are full. And usually that means a lot of good things. But restaurants that were closed are now opening up. And everybody's happy. Nobody's ever seen anything like it, actually. And everybody feels safe. You can have a child walk right through the middle of Washington, D.C., and nothing's going to happen. We were losing more than one person a week in Washington. They're being killed on an average of over one a week. The Make DC Safe Task Force has been incredible, and the Make Memphis Safe Task Force is having very similar results. It's much earlier, but we've been there for a week and a half, but I'm hearing the results are pretty incredible, and you'll hear about that. They're mobilizing more than 20 federal agencies for the largest law enforcement operation targeting violent criminals in American history. As a result of these efforts, violent crime declined nearly 20% nationwide compared to the same period last year, and it was the safest and most peaceful summer in 2 decades. And honestly, we haven't really even gotten going yet. If we didn't have to fight all of these radical left governors, we could have had Chicago taken care of, as an example. They had, in a short period of time, 4,000 murders in Chicago, and we have to listen to this man stand up and say that we're bad people. And the people of Chicago are walking around with MAGA hats. You have women, beautiful black women, walking around with MAGA hats. Please let the president in, and we don't care how he does it. They're not interested in National Guard or Army, Navy, bring them in, Marines, bring in the Marines. They just want the crime to stop, and more so because of the success that we had in D.C. I think if we didn't have that success, nobody would even believe it. So I want to congratulate all of the incredible law enforcement professionals joining us today, especially Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's terrific, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who is a fantastic legal talent. He really is. He's a great guy, too. And, of course, FBI Director Kash Patel. They have worked so hard on this and other things. Since the start of the administration, the FBI has arrested over 23,000 violent criminals, more than double the number arrested in the final year of the Biden disaster. The FBI has also destroyed or severely disrupted more than 170 organized criminal enterprises and gangs, 1,600 of the most violent gangs, and confiscated over 6,000 illegal firearms. And they've tracked down and arrested 4 fugitives on the most wanted list, 4 of the most wanted. Actually, 2 of them were the most wanted fugitives in the world. There's still much more work to be done, which is why the FBI continues to work alongside the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of War to defend. And Pete Hegseth has been fantastic, by the way, on this too, on other things, but on this too. To defend law and order and combat violent crime, arrest illegal aliens, and make American cities the safest in the world. And when I campaigned, I talked about crime, but I never knew that we were going to get into it like we did. You know, I mean, I used to watch these cities with the murders. Chicago recently had one deal where they had 11 murders in one weekend, and they said, well, yeah, but it was a holiday weekend. They actually told me that was the reason, like it was okay because it was a holiday. It was Labor Day. These people are the worst. They really have to, they better, I tell you what, the people in Chicago and the people in places like that can be fixed. At some point, it gets to where you can't fix it anymore. It's too far gone. And we have some cities like that. But these are great cities that can be fixed. I'm going to be strongly recommending, at the request of government officials, which is always nice, that you start looking at San Francisco. I think we can make San Francisco. There's one of our great cities 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and now it's a mess. And we have great support in San Francisco, so I'd like to recommend that for inclusion, maybe in your next group. You'll get great support. Every American deserves to live in a community where they're not afraid of being mugged, murdered, robbed, raped, assaulted, or shot. And that's exactly what our administration is working to deliver. I didn't realize I was going to make this such a big factor in the administration. I didn't really campaign. I campaigned on crime, but I never thought we'd go into every city and take a really safe city that we've all been living with for years and make them safe. And now it's like a passion for me, and it's a passion for the people behind me. So I didn't get elected. I did get elected for crime, but I didn't get elected for what we're doing. This is many, many steps above. And I want to thank Stephen Miller, who's right back in the audience right there. I'd love to have him. I love watching him on television. I'd love to have him come up and explain his true feelings, but maybe not his truest feelings. That might be going a little bit too far. But, Stephen, thank you for doing an unbelievable job. And the people of this country love you, I'll tell you, and they love what you say about crime and stopping crime. So now I'd like to ask Director Patel to say a few words, and then Pam and Todd also. And I just want to congratulate them. This is an amazing thing. And we're just at the start. We're going to go into other cities that we're not talking about purposely. We're getting ready to go in. And when they go in, like Cash as an example told me that people didn't even know. 5 months ago, they went into Chicago, and they started doing a lot of work in Chicago. And we brought the numbers down a little bit. And but that really was just preparatory work for what we're going to do with the surge. We're going to have a surge of strong, good people, patriots, and they're going to go in, they straighten it all out. So a lot of these cities we're already working on, but we don't do it with a big flavor. But in a little while, you're going to see some numbers that you're not going to believe. And I think you'll probably start with Memphis, because I'm hearing the numbers are much quicker than we even thought possible. But again, D.C. it speaks for itself. Chicago is going to be okay. We're going to save Chicago. And I told you, and I told them, a very respected man, the head of the Union Pacific, said, "Sir, save Chicago. It can be saved." And the way he said it, it was like, can you believe it? We're trying to save Chicago. But I understood exactly what he wants, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to save all of our cities, and we're going to make them essentially crime-free, like other countries have crime-free. If you go all over the world, you go to the world, you hear Afghanistan and you hear all these different places. Our crime in certain cities is worse than anything they can even imagine. And we're not going to have that any longer. It's going to stop, and it stops right here. Cash, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. What I'd like to do is just highlight some of the outstanding work that the men and women of the FBI have been doing. And thanks to your brave leadership and the mandate you were given by the American people not only defend the homeland but crush violent crime, you tasked us with our great partners at the Department of Justice and the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General to start making arrests and bring prosecutions and safeguard our cities. And you said it, this is just the beginning. In just 7 months, I hope the media takes a look at every one of these charts, because these are the best numbers for fighting crime in U.S. history, and it's only 7 months in. And to do that, our vehicle to do it of choice was Operation Summer Heat, which the FBI architected to go after violent criminals. And in just a 3-month span, you had 8,700 arrests of violent criminals. You had 2,200 firearms seized off the streets permanently to safeguard our communities. You had 421 kilograms of fentanyl seized. Just to put that in perspective, that's enough to kill 55 million Americans alone. You had 45,000 kilograms of cocaine seized. And thanks to our Department of Justice partners, you had 2,100 indictments in 3 months, from June to September alone. Mr. President, that in and of itself would be historic for a 4-year presidency. You did that in 7 months because you let good cops be cops, and you partnered us with the right people at the Department of Justice to put the handcuffs on and bring them to court and put them in prison. And if that weren't enough, when you look at the year, for the entire 7-month period that we're talking about here, if you look at the past 4 years of the Biden administration, 16,000, 17,000, 15,000, 15,000. That's the number of arrests year over year of violent felons in this country for the Biden administration. Mr. President, in 7 months, you have 28,600 arrests of violent felons in just 7 months alone, because of your leadership and the dedication of the men and women at the FBI who want to go out there and do the job they were prevented from doing, because that department used to be weaponized and politicized. And this is what happens when you take out the fangs of weaponization. This number is historic by every metric. 28,000 people have been arrested, violent felons alone. And then when you go over there and look at some of these charts, if you don't mind, I'll just hop over here. Look at the metrics for not just violent crime, but the homeland. Mr. President, during your administration, the FBI has found and located 5,400 children. That is a 30% increase year to date over the last administration. Violent crimes against children arrests alone are up 10%. Gang arrests are up 210% in the last 7 months alone. And transnational organized crime, which Stephen Miller has been a great partner in, is up over 12% alone. These numbers are historic just as a snapshot. But just so people don't think we're focusing on violent crime alone, the national security mission, Mr. President, under your leadership has never been stronger. We have gone after espionage activities against our main counterparts in China, Russia, and Iran. In China alone, we've had over a 50% increase in espionage arrests alone and prosecutions. In Iran, we have had a 50% increase, again, in espionage cases. And in Russia, we've had a 33% increase in espionage cases alone. When it comes to counterterrorism, year to date, we have 125 arrests this year versus 100 last year, year to date alone. And when it comes to the cyber criminal activities, which are some of the largest enterprises plaguing everyday Americans, we at the FBI have put out a mission to go after cyber criminals like never before. Last year, they had in total 191. This year, you already have 252 arrests. 52 arrests of violent cyber criminals who are stealing from senior citizens, who are violating our children's rights and freedoms, and who are violating everyday Americans. These programs are record. And two of the things I'll finish with that I'm most proud of, Mr. President, this FBI. Fentanyl. As you know, it's a scourge that is killing our youth, 100,000 plus a year. To date, the FBI has seized 1,900 kilograms of fentanyl. That's enough lethal doses to kill 127 million Americans alone. To date. And if that weren't enough, Mr. President, you said we have to go after the worst of the worst. And you empowered our Department of Justice, our Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, and the Deputy Director at the FBI, led the charge, not just on summer heat, but he also led the charge in the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives. These people have been on the run for years. And in 7 months, you captured not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 of the FBI's most top 10 fugitives. 4. And just to put that in perspective, Mr. President, the Biden administration captured 4 in all of 4 years. You're on 7, and we're going to get to 10. We're going to get to 10 of 10. This includes a lady who murdered her 6-year-old handicapped child and fled to India. We got her in 2 months. This includes a narco trafficker. This includes a sex trafficker. This includes another first-degree murderer and gangbanger. These people were on the run because of the prior administration's reckless policies that destroyed our communities, and you came in and with a mandate said, go after the worst of the worst. This is just the beginning. This is what happens when you let good cops be good cops at the FBI. Mr. President, I just want to thank you for your incredible leadership, our brave partnership with prosecutors who know how to bring cases and make sure these arrests stick. And that's what the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General have led the charge across this country, because arrests without prosecutions are meaningless. We are deterring criminals from doing this activity. We are preventing criminals from coming into America, and we are absolutely crushing violent crime like never before and defending this homeland, sir. And not to mention, I almost forgot this one, it took you, sir, 2 weeks to get the Abbey Gate bomber. Joe Biden had 4 years to look for him. You got him in 2 weeks, thanks to the interagency effort by the FBI and the CIA, went to Pakistan, and now 13 brave warriors who were senselessly murdered because of disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal. They have justice, their families have a peace of mind, and we're going to continue to find the others, Mr. President. On behalf of the FBI, sir, I just want to thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Great job. Very good. Very impressive. Pam, would you like to say?
President Trump, the men and women of law enforcement say 2 things to me repeatedly. First, you have taken the handcuffs off them and let them do their jobs, and you let cops be cops. That's why all this is happening. The director, the deputy director are working around the clock. All of these great men and women in the FBI, they have families at home, and they are working during a government shutdown right now. Many of them have small children. Many of them, I was talking to an agent this morning, many of them have babies at home, and they are working around the clock to not only keep our country, but our world safe. And that's what Operation Summer Heat did. Thank you, Director, and to the Deputy Director for everything you did on behalf of the Department of Justice, and you're going to continue to keep doing. And they set the stage for what we're doing in Memphis. You're going to hear a lot more about that, our joint task force next week.